He once wrote that man cannot stand a meaningless life. But Carl Jung also knew something deeper, something more private, that the same man cannot stand a meaningless encounter. The bedroom, in all its intimacy, is not immune to the soul's hunger for depth. Great sex, as men experience it, is not merely a release. It's not conquest, not even chemistry in the chemical sense. It is a psychic event, a threshold experience, a confrontation with the other that reveals the self. Jung called this the Anima, the inner woman of a man's psyche, not merely a feminine figure, but the embodiment of his deepest emotional truth, his capacity for relatedness, his hunger for connection. And when a man lies with a woman, consciously or not, he is not only joining bodies, he is invoking her, that inner being who whispers in his ear what kind of woman he longs for, what kind of union he fears, and what perhaps he cannot admit he desires. Secret 1. Great sex is the experience of being seen and surviving it. Men are rarely taught to yearn. They are taught to perform, to satisfy, to know what they are doing. But beneath the practiced hands and confident lips, many carry a deeper wish. To be known, not as the strong one, not as the conqueror, but as the mystery they themselves do not yet understand. This is why, in moments of true vulnerability, the masculine heart cracks open. Not when he dominates, but when he is disarmed. When the woman before him becomes not an object of pleasure, but a mirror of his own interior world. When she touches him, not as a body, but as a soul. Jung spoke often of the shadow, the part of ourselves we repress, deny, or fear. In the bedroom, the shadow is alive. It whispers of shame, performance anxiety, the fear of inadequacy. But in the right conditions, with the right presence, that same shadow becomes a portal to passion, to rawness, to something not safe but sacred. The man who dares to be fully present, to feel, to shake, to lose control, discovers something astonishing. He is more than what he thought he had to be. Secret 2. Great sex is confrontation, not comfort. Contrary to our consumer era narrative, where pleasure is the product and ease is the goal, Jung would say otherwise. There is no coming to consciousness without pain. The kind of sex men remember, the kind that carves into memory and identity, is not the one where everything goes right. It is the encounter that cracks open their fixed self-image. A man steps into bed with all of his myths, the stoic father, the pornographic fantasy, the athlete, the intellectual, the protector. But none of these myths survive a truly intimate moment. They must die. Because the woman before him is not asking for a role. She is asking for a revelation. Sometimes in the midst of passion, he meets his own inadequacy. Sometimes he cannot please. Sometimes he cries. And in that collapse, something real begins. Not a performance, but a reckoning. He discovers the truth Jung always hinted at. The self is not born in perfection. It is born in the union of opposites, in embracing both his potency and his fragility. His lust and his longing, his ache for control and his secret desire to surrender, and perhaps, most powerfully, his longing to be devoured by something greater than himself. Secret 3. Great sex is symbolic. It means something, even when men pretend it doesn't. In Jung's world, symbols are the language of the unconscious. They are not signs to decode, but experiences to undergo. Sex, then, becomes one of the most potent symbolic acts available to human beings, because it fuses instinct with meaning. A man who yearns to kiss deeply is not just hungry for lips. He is hungry to dissolve his isolation. A man who craves being pulled into her, not just physically but psychically, is not only after climax. He is after transcendence, some moment, however brief, in which his ordinary self is annihilated and he touches the eternal. Jung would say, he is touching the archetype of union, the myth of wholeness, what alchemy called the conjunctio oppositorum, the sacred marriage of opposites. This is why porn can never truly satisfy, no matter how vivid or explicit. Because while the body may climax, the soul remains untouched. It is not the nudity of the body that men crave, but the nakedness of meaning. To enter another human being and be changed, that is the ancient dream. The mistake modern culture makes is confusing variety for depth. more positions, more partners, more novelty. But the man whose anima is awake wants something else. Not more sex, but sex that reveals more. Of her, of himself, of the invisible architecture of his psyche. Secret 4. Great sex is the rehearsal of love, or its premonition. Not every encounter becomes a relationship, but every encounter reveals a relationship to something. To love, to longing, to self. The mistake is thinking sex is separate from love, that sex can be sealed off from meaning. But Jung would ask, why then do men remember certain nights for decades? Why does one woman, though seen only once, leave a mark deeper than all the others? Because something was transferred, something unspoken, the psychic residue of truth. Great sex, Jung might say, is when the ego gives way to the self. When a man forgets his name and remembers his essence. When he stops worrying about how he is performing and starts trembling with what he is feeling. When the moment becomes larger than the act, and what he finds there is not just pleasure, but revelation, the kind that doesn't end when the bodies part, but follows him into dreams, into memory, into who he becomes. He may not have the words for it, but something in him knows. That wasn't just sex. That was a kind of dying, a kind of being born, a brush with the archetype of Eros itself. And in the silence afterward, if he dares to listen, he may hear her, the Anima, speaking softly. You are more than you believed. You are not alone. She was never just a woman. That's the terrifying transcendent truth. When a man falls, when he burns, when he spirals into obsession or awakens in quiet, all after a single night, he's not responding to her alone. He is meeting his Anima, and she, that ancient archetype, wears many faces. Jung taught that men do not see women clearly at first. Not in love, not in lust, not even in marriage. They project. The psyche, desperate for completion, casts its deepest longings upon another body. And in that moment of projection, sex is no longer just an act. It becomes ritual, a summoning. She might just be someone he met at a bar, but in his unconscious, she is the priestess of his inner world. She is beauty, power, chaos, nurture, erotic knowledge. He does not know this, of course. He only knows he can't stop thinking about her, that her voice lingers, that her body felt like scripture. The first kiss was not just a kiss, it was communion. And yet this projection is dangerous, because what he worships is not her. Not truly. It is himself, reflected, refracted, idealized. The parts of him he disowns, the feelings he cannot access, the mysteries he cannot enter alone. The Anima is not only desire, she is also soul. She is the part of him that aches to feel, to grieve, to be moved. And in the woman he chooses, he seeks reunion with that lost part of himself. That is why some men chase women they cannot have. It's not about conquest. It's about something sacred. Unattainability becomes a mirror for his own distance from the feminine within. It's not her rejection that wounds him. It's the feeling that something essential in him remains unfelt, unheld. So what does this mean in sex? It means that great sex, for a man, is rarely just about pleasure. It's about recognition. In the tension before touch, in the silence between breaths, he is seeking something he doesn't know how to name. A rebalancing. A release not only of the body but of the self he keeps locked away. This is why the Anima is both muse and destroyer. She inspires the poems, she ignites the fire, but she also threatens his control. Because to love her, even in the form of a real living woman, requires ego death. He cannot possess her. He cannot tame her. He must meet her with reverence or be consumed by his own illusions. True intimacy demands sacrifice, not flowers, not dates, not flattery, but the surrender of the roles he hides behind, the mask of certainty, the armor of invulnerability. And nowhere is this sacrifice more intense than in the bedroom, where nothing can be faked for long. Because the body knows, the soul knows, and if he's honest, he knows too. He knows when the connection is false, when he is performing, not connecting, when he is watched, even as he watches, when he is alone, even as he touches her. But he also knows, viscerally, when it's real, when she pulls him closer, not just with her thighs, but with her spirit. When he is not admired but met, when the walls fall, and something inside him whispers, "I am home." And yet, what is more terrifying to the modern man than being seen without his roles? Here lies the psychological paradox Jung exposed. A man may long for the Anima's warmth, but recoil from her intensity. He may want depth, but drown in it. He may crave surrender, but run when she offers it. Because to meet her truly, he must be reborn, and rebirth is not gentle. He must face what Jung called the negredo, the blackening, the dissolution of his former self, the part of the alchemical process where he is broken down, stripped bare, left trembling in confusion. This is not poetic metaphor. This is what happens when a man makes love not to a body, but to a being, to a soul that sees into him, and in seeing him, calls him out of hiding. Have you ever seen a man cry during sex? Not because of sadness, but because he was overwhelmed by presence. Because in that moment, something inside him broke, and something else, ancient and unnamed, came rushing through. That is the Anima. That is Eros awakening. That is what great sex does. It unmakes us. It calls us beyond the limits we've placed on our longing. Most men never speak of this. They joke, they brag, they forget, or they try to, but they remember certain women for the rest of their lives. Not because of the acts performed, but because of the transformation invoked, because something deep was stirred. And whether it lasted one night or one decade, that experience marked them. Jung would say they were touched by the self, not the ego, not the social identity, but the totality of their being, unconscious and conscious, yearning to be made whole. And what about the spiritual hunger? It's there, in every search, in every profile swipe, in every gaze held a second too long. The longing is not just sexual, it's spiritual. The man wants to be undone by something real. Not everyone admits this. The modern world offers endless distractions, porn, hustle, productivity. But beneath the bravado, the late-night scrolling, the detached encounters lies a deep, exiled yearning to be pierced by beauty, to be found by love, to dissolve into something greater. The Anima waits, not as an idealized goddess, but as an invitation. She appears in dreams, in art, in the whisper that says, "There is more to you than this." And in sex, real soul-rattling sex, she becomes flesh. She becomes the woman who stares into him with unflinching eyes, who moans from a place he didn't know existed, who wraps her arms around him and does not let go when he trembles, who tells him without words, "You are not just a man, you are the divine in form, and I see you." That is what great sex is to a man who is awake. Not just sensation, not just technique, but a descent into meaning, a journey into the feminine within and without, a return to wholeness, if only for a moment. And when it ends, when the body's cool and the breath evens, it's not the silence that lingers, it's the shift, in him, in her, in the space between. Something has changed, something real has been touched, and even if they never speak again, he will carry her. Because in her, he met not just desire, but the part of himself that dares to feel. Not every man understands what has happened. He only knows that something was lost, and something else was born. In the hours after deep, transformative sex, silence becomes a language. He might not speak. He might rise, dress, move like a ghost through his own life. And the woman may never know how profoundly she has touched him. But within tectonic plates have shifted, Jung knew what few dared to say aloud. The soul remembers what the mind tries to forget. A man may go back to routine, to work, to gym, to the noise, but part of him remains altered, and that part will haunt him, not as a regret, but as a threshold unmet again. Because once he's tasted the sacred, ordinary desire no longer satisfies. This is the cost of intimacy with meaning. It awakens a hunger that can't be quieted by novelty or skill. It demands truth. It demands depth. It demands the very things he was taught to suppress. What men call great sex is often the first page of an unspoken book. Not a story of physical satisfaction, but of metaphysical recognition, of spiritual impact, of something archetypal rising into the body, then vanishing like lightning, gone before it can be fully understood. And it leaves behind a question. Who was I in that moment? Not just what happened or how did it feel, but who was I when I let go? When I touched her without artifice? When I trembled and didn't hide? Was that man more me than the one who sits now in this meeting, smiling on cue? This is not nostalgia. It is individuation. Because great sex is not an endpoint. It is a summons, a glimpse into the self, into the possibility of being whole. Jung said the psyche is not static, it is alive. It seeks balance, seeks unity. And a man, once shaken by such an experience, must choose return to sleep or awaken further. This is why some men spiral after deep encounters. Not because the woman is gone, but because a part of themselves came alive through her, and without her, they don't know how to keep it alive. She became the medium through which they met their soul. But if he is wise, he will not pursue her forever. He will not try to repeat the night, to replicate the conditions. Because the truth is harsher and more beautiful. She was a messenger, not the destination. The sacred masculine must learn to hold what he once sought to possess. This is the beginning of inner maturity. A shift from craving sex as confirmation to honoring it as communion. He stops needing to be impressive. Stops asking, was I enough? And starts asking, did I show up as all of me? And this doesn't make him soft. It makes him dangerous, in the way fire is dangerous. Because now his desire is awake and directed. Not reckless, not aimless. It seeks truth, not validation. Mystery, not mastery. He becomes harder to seduce, but easier to captivate. Because he is no longer drawn to surfaces. He is watching for depth, for signs, for that rare look in a woman's eyes that says, I want your whole being, not just your performance. He no longer splits the sacred and the sexual. This, Jung would say, is Eros in its divine form. Not just the urge to fuse, but the force that pulls us toward totality. That insists we be fully ourselves, and invites the other to do the same. But this level of sex, of soul exchange, is not for everyone. It requires both to walk in naked, not just of clothes, but of persona, to abandon irony, to surrender control, to risk tenderness that cannot be undone. And not everyone will choose this. Many men will return to what is safe, what is casual, what is simple. Not because they are weak, but because the fire is real and it burns. But the man who stays in the fire, he begins to transform. He becomes a lover, not just of bodies, but of being. He wants to know what her breath sounds like when she is not afraid, what his own hands do when they are not performing. He begins to sense her past lovers in her hips, not with jealousy, but with awe. He wonders, who helped shape the way she touches me? And he understands now that sex is not separate from story, that every moan, every pause, every trembling inhale contains years of untold memory. Trauma, longing, ecstasy, she is not his for the night. She is a universe opening. And if he listens with his whole body, she will tell him everything without a word. This is what makes sex great. Not power, not novelty, but the presence that says, I am here to know you as no one ever has, not with force, but with reverence. Jung would smile here, perhaps even laugh softly, because this too is a return to the self, to the mythic journey, the hero not slaying dragons, but surrendering ego, not seeking virgins, but wholeness, not conquering women, but integrating the anima. This is the sacred quest behind so many failed relationships, unspoken dreams, late-night ache, the masculine seeking its missing half, not in a woman alone, but in what she awakens in him. And she, if she is awake, does the same. Because the anima, once met, invites the animus, her inner masculine. And when both partners come as whole beings, not seeking completion in each other, but expression through each other, sex becomes sacrament, not performance, not transaction, not release, but revelation. And what is left when the bodies part? The memory remains, but so does the question. How will you live now that you've been touched by what is real? For some, it means a different kind of life, a different kind of love, a slower kiss, a gaze held longer, a refusal to touch someone you cannot meet fully. For others, it's more private, a quiet vow to never betray what was felt, to honor it even in solitude, to let it guide future choices, even if no one understands why. And for the few who walk the path deeper, it becomes destiny. They seek partners, not projects, encounters, not distractions. They are willing to wait, to ache, to go without. Because what they're after is not sex, but soul sex. The kind that undoes you. The kind that baptizes you in your own truth. This is the hidden legacy of great sex for a man. Not conquest, not memory, but awakening. He may never see her again. But every woman he meets from now on will feel it. That he has been somewhere most men fear to go. And he is no longer afraid to feel everything, even if it breaks him open again. Because he knows, Eros is the path and the self is the destination. And somewhere in the night a voice rises from within him, the Anima now integrated, whispering, "You have touched the eternal. You are finally alive." If this journey stirred something deep within you, if it echoed with truths you've always felt but never named, then don't let it end here. Subscribe now to explore more of the hidden language of love, sex, psyche, and soul. Join a growing community of seekers, men and women, who are done with surface-level answers and ready for real transformation. Expect powerful insights, raw honesty, and content that challenges, heals, and awakens. This isn't just content. It's a call back to yourself. Subscribe and begin the deeper conversation.